My name is Jenna Caldwell. I am 34 years old. I live in Bend, Oregon now, but I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I left Dayton 19 months ago on a Tuesday in March. I packed my Honda Civic alone at 5 a.m. No one from my family came to help me load it. I drove 1,400 miles with my rescue dog Milo in the passenger seat. I stopped only for gas and cheap coffee. I cried once in Nebraska and kept driving west. I didn't leave because of one big fight. I left because of 200 small disappearances. I left because I got tired of being useful and never being seen. In my family, I was the reliable one. Not the favorite, not the baby, just the reliable one. That is a job title, not a daughter. For 7 years, I was Brianna's unpaid second parent. I picked up Lily from kindergarten every Tuesday and Thursday. I watched all 3 kids every Saturday night so she and Tyler could go out. I was Linda's personal assistant. I scheduled her blood pressure checks with Dr. Patel. I refilled her prescriptions at CVS and set phone reminders she ignored. I was the family event planner. I hosted Thanksgiving for 18 people in my tiny 2-bedroom rental. I remembered every birthday, every allergy, every gift. When I moved, I expected at least a text. I got silence. Not angry silence, just the empty kind that confirms what you feared. 3 weeks after I arrived, I sent my first message. Made it to Bend. Apartment is small but sunny. Milo loves the river. It was delivered at 9:14 a.m. It was read at 9:16 a.m. No one replied. I stared at the blue check marks for a long time. I told myself they were busy. Brianna had 3 kids under 7. Linda was leading the women's ministry. Tyler worked overtime at the plant. So I kept reaching out. I sent 214 messages over 19 months. I have them all saved in a folder on my laptop. None of them asked for money. None of them asked for favors. They were just bridges I kept building to people who never crossed. I texted Linda on Mother's Day last year. Thinking of you today. Love you. Read? No reply. I texted her again on her birthday. I texted Brianna on September 12th. Want to take the kids apple picking at Huber's next month? Read at 7:42 p.m. Nothing. I texted her October 3rd. How's Mason's ear infection? Need anything from Costco? Read? Nothing. I sent a photo of a scarf I knitted for Lily. I texted Tyler on his promotion day. So proud of you. You earned this. He read it during his lunch break. He never answered. I texted Gerald, my uncle, on the anniversary of my dad's death. Miss him today. He read it. He never answered. Every holiday, I sent a group photo from Bend. The snow on Mount Bachelor, Milo in the river, my new kitchen. All read, all ignored. My aunt Paula in Pittsburgh was the only one who called. Every Sunday at 6 p.m. like church, she would ask, did they answer this week? I would lie at first, then I stopped. Paula said 10 years ago, Jenna, they treat you like staff. I defended them then. Paula stopped speaking to Linda for 3 years after that. She told me last winter, you can't heal in the place that made you sick. In January, I decided I needed clarity, not revenge. I needed to see it all in one place. So I exported every message. I printed them at FedEx on thick white paper. 214 pages, each one with the date, time, and read underneath. I put them in a navy blue 3-ring binder. On the cover page, I typed 12 words. You didn't lose me. You stopped answering. Here is the proof. I mailed it to Linda's house in Dayton. I paid extra for it to arrive on Saturday, March 9th. That was Oliver's 3rd birthday party. I was not invited. I was 3 states away. Paula FaceTimed me from the kitchen so I could watch. Linda opened the Amazon box on the island. She thought it was a gift from me. Brianna stood next to her holding Oliver. Tyler stood behind them with a beer. Gerald was by the fridge. The room was loud until Linda read the cover. She laughed nervously. Oh, Jenna's being dramatic again. She opened the binder. The first page was my Mother's Day text. Brianna flipped to page 47. It was her apple picking invite. Her face went white. Tyler saw his 33 read messages in a row. Gerald saw page 91. It was my text to him about Dad. He looked at his son Tyler and said nothing. Paula said quietly into the phone, "No, Linda, she's not being dramatic. She's being honest." The whole kitchen went silent. Linda closed the binder. She put it in the pantry like it was trash. Brianna took Oliver upstairs. The party ended early. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 8:47 p.m. It was Tyler. I let it ring twice before I answered. I didn't say hello. He said, "Brianna doesn't know I'm calling." I said, "Okay." He breathed for a long time before speaking again. He said, "I read them all that night after everyone left. I couldn't sleep for 3 days straight." His voice cracked. He listed them from memory. My text about his dad's surgery. My text about the Browns game. My Father's Day message. He said, "I saw every single one, Jenna. I read them and I chose not to answer. I don't have an excuse." I thanked him for telling the truth. He told me Lily still draws me into family pictures. She draws me with purple hair in Oregon. I told him I miss them every day. I told him I would not come back to Dayton to be the fixer again. He said he understood. We hung up after 11 minutes. A week later, Linda called and left a voicemail. It was 2 minutes and 14 seconds long. I saved it immediately. She didn't start with her usual sharpness. She sounded tired. She said, "I sat at the kitchen table last night with your binder." She said, "There was one from April 14th last year. You wrote, 'Mom, I made your pot roast. Wish you were here.'" She paused. She whispered, "I never answered that. You made my mother's recipe and you wanted to share it with me." She was quiet for 15 seconds. She said, "I don't know how to say I was wrong, Jenna. I was never taught how." She said, "But I saw it. I saw all of it." I listened to it 3 times in my living room in Bend. For the first time in my life, my mother sounded like a person, not a performance. I didn't call back that night. I opened my journal instead. I wrote, "She finally looked up." Brianna called the next Thursday. Tyler had given her my number. I answered because I was curious which version of her would show up. She started with anger. "I don't understand why you had to humiliate Mom in front of everyone." I asked which part she meant. She said, "All of it. The binder, the timing." I said, "Brianna, I sent you 94 messages in 5 months. Do you want the dates?" I read them to her slowly. September 12th, October 3rd, November 20th, December 24th, January 15th. She said, "Stop, I get it." I said, "Do you?" "Because none of them asked you for babysitting or money. I just wanted my sister." Her breathing changed on the phone. She wasn't angry anymore. She was cornered. I could hear it. I said, "I know you're exhausted. I was there for 7 years. I did Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I know exactly how hard it is." She started crying quietly, not the loud crying she does for attention, the real kind that slips out. I said, "I love your kids, Brie, but I am not your backup plan anymore." She whispered, "Mom says this is all your fault." Then she hung up. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with tea. The rain was hitting the windows in Bend. I opened my laptop and wrote an email. I sent it to Linda, Brianna, and Tyler. Subject line, "Where I stand." I wrote it like a project brief from work. Point 1. I am safe and well in Bend, Oregon. Point 2. I left because I was treated as a function, not a person. Point 3. I am open to building new relationships, not restarting old ones. Point 4. My boundaries are no guilt, no using kids, no social media posts. Point 5. I love you. That's why I tried 214 times. Love without respect is just a job. And I quit. I read it once. I did not add "I hope you understand." I hit send at 9:03 p.m. I put on my coat and walked in the rain. Paula texted me 2 hours later. Linda had forwarded my email to Brianna with one line. Who does she think she is? For the first time in 30 years, Brianna did not reply to Linda. She did not defend her. She just turned her phone off. Linda's life in Dayton started to shrink. She had been the queen of Grace Lutheran Church. She ran the women's ministry and the potlucks. After the binder, Pastor Mark asked to meet. He suggested gently that she take a step back from leadership. She agreed, because she had to. Barbara from the ministry stopped calling. Mrs. Alvarez next door stopped coming over for coffee. She just waved from her car now. The hardest part for Linda was not the gossip, it was the errands. She had to drive herself to Dr. Patel for the first time in 6 years. She had to learn which CVS had her lisinopril ready. She had to cook dinner for one. She had to fill her own calendar. She called Brianna on a Tuesday. Can you take me to the doctor? Brianna said, Mom, I have 3 kids. I can't just drop everything. Linda was silent. She had just heard the exact sentence she never let me say for a decade. Figure it out yourself. Paula called Linda late one night. Linda said, Everyone looks at me like I'm a monster. Paula said, No, Linda. They're just seeing you clearly. Tyler and Brianna's marriage cracked open. He told her in the kitchen after the kids were asleep. We used Jenna Bree. We both did. She said, So now it's my fault your dad won't talk to you? He said, It's our fault Jenna left. We took her for granted. Brianna walked out of the room. She always left when the truth got too close. But the truth was already in the house. At her mommy group the next week, Jessica asked over fruit snacks. Is it true your sister sent 200 texts and no one answered? Brianna said, It's complicated. Jessica said, 200 texts isn't complicated. That's someone begging to be seen. No one defended Brianna. That night, Brianna sat on her kitchen floor at 11 p.m. The house was finally quiet. She opened our old text thread. She scrolled back to last October. My message said, Hey, just checking on you. You seemed tired last time I saw you. She stared at it for 10 minutes. She hired a babysitter the next day. A real one she actually pays. Twice a week for 4 hours. It cost her $240 a week. She started doing her own grocery pickup at Kroger. She started managing the kids' dentist appointments on her phone calendar. She was drowning and learning to swim. 1 month after the party, Paula gave me the update. Linda and Brianna were barely speaking. Linda blamed Brianna for not calling me. Brianna blamed Linda for racing us this way. Tyler and Gerald weren't speaking because Gerald saw those 33 red receipts. Tyler and Brianna were sleeping in the same bed, but only talking about logistics. Who picks up Mason from soccer? Is the water bill paid? The irony was not lost on me. My binder didn't create any new information. Every word had already been sent and ignored. I just printed the truth and put it on a table where no one could look away. The family didn't break because of me. It broke because of what they did when they thought no one was watching. I just turned the lights on. Paula called me that Sunday. She said, They're a mess, honey. I said, I know. She asked how I felt. I told her I didn't feel happy or victorious. I felt like someone who finally set down a piano she'd been carrying uphill alone. That night, I opened my Google Calendar. It was full of color. Green for Saturday hikes with Naomi, purple for pottery class on Wednesdays, orange for monthly dinner at Marco's, red for blogs that just said me. Read, cook, long bath, try pasta from scratch. Every single color belonged to me. My time, my choices, my life. No one else's emergencies were on there. On Monday, my boss Helen called me into her office. She slid a paper across her desk. It was a promotion to senior project manager. She gave me a 12% raise. She said, You're the most reliable person on this team, Jenna. I smiled and signed it. I didn't tell her I learned reliability by managing a family who never said thank you. Some skills are born in hard places. That night, I FaceTimed Paula from my couch. Milo was snoring next to me. She was in her kitchen in Pittsburgh with wine. She asked, "How's it feel out there?" I said, "Like I finally have a life that belongs to me." She said, "Good. That's all I ever wanted." Tyler kept emailing me every 10 days or so. No pressure, no guilt, just a photo of Lily's art project, a video of Oliver laughing, a note that said, "Mason lost his first tooth. Thought you'd want to know." After the third one, I replied. I wrote, "Thank you, they're getting so big." It wasn't opening the door wide, it was cracking a window an inch. That was enough. 6 months after the binder, it was September in Bend. The rain had come back early. I didn't mind the rain anymore. Linda had started seeing a therapist. Pastor Mark had recommended Dr. Susan Chen. She didn't want to go, but she went. Linda sent me one email. It was 5 sentences long. "I'm working on myself." That's all I can say right now. No expectations. I read it twice. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. But I archived it instead of deleting it. That felt like progress. Brianna and I still hadn't spoken since she hung up. But Tyler told me she was in therapy too. She was learning to say, "I can't," out loud. He said it was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Learning at 31 how to be an adult without a free sister on call. Tyler had become the quiet bridge between Oregon and Ohio. He never asked when I was coming home for Christmas. He just sent moments. Linda and Brianna were talking again. But it was different. Stiff, polite conversations at preschool pickup. The old dynamic was gone. They didn't know how to talk without me in the middle translating. I was the glue, and I had moved 3 states away. As for me, I wasn't moving back to Ohio. I had no plan to return. But I hadn't locked the door and thrown away the key. I had just taken the key off the hook and put it in my desk drawer. If the right moment came, I would know. One Thursday in October, I was in my kitchen in Bend. The whole apartment smelled like rosemary and beef. I was making pot roast. It was Linda's mother's recipe. I had a photo of the stained index card in my phone from 10 years ago. Carrots, onion, thyme, red wine. I cooked it low and slow for 4 hours. My friend Naomi came over at 7. She walked in and stopped in the doorway. She said, "Oh my God, Jenna, what is that smell?" I said, "My mom's pot roast." I said it without any bitterness for the first time. We sat at my small table with 2 cloth napkins from Goodwill. We ate slowly. Naomi said, "This is the best thing I've ever tasted." After dinner, I washed dishes at the sink. My hands were in warm, soapy water. I was 14 again in Dayton. But everything was different. The house was mine. The food was my choice. And when I turned around, someone looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you." 2 words I had waited 17 years to hear from my own family. Naomi meant it. And it counted. Later that night, in bed, I opened my phone. I opened my text thread with Linda. The last message was from 19 months ago. I typed a new one. "I made your pot roast tonight. It turned out good." I stared at the send button for 15 seconds. My thumb was shaking. I pressed send at 10:14 p.m. I put the phone face down and tried to breathe. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Linda. Her reply said, "I'm glad, sweetheart." No guilt trip, no "when are you coming home," no lecture about family, just 2 warm words. Maybe that's where healing starts. Maybe that's as far as it ever goes. Either way, I was okay that night in Bend. I didn't leave my family to punish them. I want you to understand that. I left because I needed to answer one question. Do I exist outside of what I do for other people? Would anyone notice if I just stopped showing up? Would anyone call? The answer took 19 months to arrive. Not one phone call, not one birthday text, not one visit 12 minutes away. That answer broke my heart. I won't pretend it didn't, but a painful truth is better than a comfortable lie. The binder wasn't revenge. I didn't write a single angry word in it. I didn't add commentary or insults. I simply printed 214 messages I had already sent with love. I held up a mirror, and when they finally looked into it, they didn't see a villain. They saw themselves for the first time. If you are the person in your family who holds everything together, please hear me. The planner, the driver, the therapist, the babysitter. Your value is not measured by how useful you are to people who never say thank you. You are not a function. You are not a customer service desk for your family. You are not a free emergency contact. You are a whole person. You are allowed to move 3 states away. You are allowed to stop answering texts that drain you. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to set down the piano you've been carrying uphill alone. And you are allowed to build a life where people say thank you. And when they do, you will finally believe it. The morning after I texted Linda about the pot roast, I woke up at 6. Milo needed to go out in the cold Bend rain. I made coffee and didn't check my phone for an hour. That was new for me. For years, I checked my phone before I breathed. I was waiting for a family emergency that was always mine to solve. At 7:42 a.m., I finally looked. No new messages from Linda. Just her 2 words from last night. I am glad, sweetheart. It was still enough. Naomi texted, "Still thinking about that pot roast?" I smiled. That was the kind of follow-up I had been starving for. Work that Monday was busy. Helen gave me the Henderson project because of my promotion. It was a $2.3 million client build-out. I led the kickoff meeting with 12 people on Zoom. I delegated tasks clearly and left at 5 p.m. No one called me at 9 p.m. That night, Tyler emailed again. Subject, Lily's Science Fair. The photo showed a volcano made of baking soda. The card said, "For Aunt Jenna." I stared at it for a long time. I had missed 2 science fairs in Dayton. I had always built the volcanoes. This time, Lily built it alone. I replied, "She's brilliant. Tell her I'm proud." Tyler wrote back in 5 minutes. "She asks about you every week." November came fast in Oregon. The first snow fell on Mount Bachelor. Naomi and I started a Friday soup tradition. We took turns cooking. She made tortilla soup. I made clam chowder. We talked about everything except my family for the first time. Thanksgiving was the test. Last year, I spent it alone with Milo and cried. This year, Paula flew out from Pittsburgh to Bend. She arrived with a suitcase and a pecan pie from Trader Joe's. She hugged me at the airport for a full minute. We didn't do a bit of turkey, we did pot roast again, plus mashed potatoes and green beans. We ate at my small table with candles. Paula said, "Linda called me last week." I put my fork down. My chest tightened out of habit. She said, "She asked me what you were doing for Thanksgiving. She didn't ask to talk to you. She just wanted to know you were okay." That was progress in Linda language. Not an apology, but a question that wasn't about herself. I wrote it down in my journal. Christmas in Dayton was happening without me. Tyler sent a video on Christmas Eve, the kids opening presents in matching pajamas. Linda was in the background on the couch. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was watching the kids, not directing them. Brianna looked tired in the video. Her hair was in a messy bun. She was on the floor actually, playing Legos with Mason. Tyler's caption said, "Different this year, quieter." I watched it 3 times. I felt sad and relieved at the exact same time. I sent a package to Ohio on December 26th. Not a binder, just gifts. A book for Lily, Legos for Mason, a stuffed otter for Oliver. I included 1 card for all of them. It said, "Love, Aunt Jenna." No return address guilt trip. No call me. Linda texted me a photo on January 3rd. It was Oliver hugging the otter. Her text said, "He sleeps with it. Thank you." I didn't reply for 2 days. I needed to make sure I wasn't falling back into the old pattern of instant response. When I did reply, I wrote, "I'm so glad." 3 words: short, warm, and with a boundary. Paula called it perfect. In February, Helen sent me to a conference in Seattle. I stayed at the Hyatt downtown, overlooking the water. The company paid. I walked through Pike Place Market alone on a Tuesday night. I bought fresh flowers for my hotel room just because I wanted them. No one needed me to pick up a prescription. No one needed me to watch kids. I was just a woman buying tulips in February. That night, Brianna called. It was the first time she had called since she hung up on me. I almost didn't answer. I did. She said, "Hey." I said, "Hey." We both breathed for 10 seconds. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile. She said, "I'm in therapy. Talk to Susan Chen, same as mom." I said, "That's good." She said, "It's hard." She told me she was learning about parentification and enmeshment. She was learning I had been her co-parent since she was 22. She said, "I didn't know how much you did until I had to do it all myself." I didn't say I told you so. I just listened. She cried quietly. She said, "Tyler is thinking about leaving me." My stomach dropped. That was not what I expected. She said, "He says I'm still acting like a victim, like everything is happening to me." I asked what she thought. She said, "I think he's right." That was the most honest thing Brianna had ever said to me in our entire adult lives. We talked for 47 minutes. Not about the past, about her kids, her therapy homework, her fear of being alone. At the end, she said, "I miss you, Jenna." I said, "I miss you too, Bri." We didn't make plans. We just left it there. March arrived. It was the 2-year anniversary of my leaving Dayton. I took the day off work. Naomi and I hiked to Malo Falls. My phone buzzed at the summit. It was Linda. She was calling, not texting. I let it go to voicemail because I was on a mountain. Her voicemail was 30 seconds. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. I saw it was March 5th today. I hope you're well. That's all." She didn't ask for anything. She didn't guilt me. She just marked the day. I saved the voicemail. That night, I called Paula. I told her about Linda's call. Paula said, "She's learning a new language at 63. Give her time." In April, Tyler asked if he could bring the kids to Oregon for a weekend in July. Just him and the 3 kids. No Brianna. He wrote, "No pressure, we can get a hotel. Lily really wants to see the river you always talk about." I read it 5 times. My first instinct was panic. My second was to say yes immediately and plan everything. My third, the new one, was to pause. I replied the next morning, "I'd love that. Let's plan it together. I'll send you some kid-friendly hikes." It was collaborative, not servitude. Brianna texted me separately that week. "Thank you for saying yes to Tyler. I'm not ready to come, but I want them to know you." I wrote back, "I understand. Thank you for telling me." That exchange would have been impossible a year before. May was my 35th birthday. Helen and the office took me to lunch. Naomi made me a chocolate cake with sea salt. Paula sent flowers. Tyler and the kids sent a video singing happy birthday. Linda sent a card in the mail to my Bend address. Inside it said, "Happy 35th birthday, Jenna. I am proud of the life you built. Love, Mom." No mention of coming home, just pride. I cried in my kitchen holding that card. Not because it fixed everything, because it was the first birthday card in 10 years that didn't feel like a bill. June was the Henderson project closeout. We delivered on time and under budget. Helen gave me a $5,000 bonus. November in Bend was cold and clear. Helen approved my PTO for Thanksgiving week. I hadn't been back to Ohio in 26 months. Paula called it a test flight, not a landing. She said, "You can visit without moving back in." I wrote that on a sticky note. Tyler offered to pay for my flight. I said no and bought my own ticket to Dayton. I needed to arrive on my own terms. Linda texted, "Your old room is ready." I replied, "I'm staying at the Marriott downtown." She wrote back, "Okay, I understand." That boundary would have started a war 2 years ago. Now it just started a conversation. Progress is quiet like that. I landed at Day Airport on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Milo stayed with Naomi in Bend. I traveled light with just a carry-on. Tyler picked me up, not Linda. He hugged me at baggage claim. He said, "Thanks for coming." He didn't say finally. We drove to his house first. Brianna was nervous in the kitchen. She was making coffee with shaky hands. She said, "The kids are at school." I said, "Good, we can talk first." She nodded and almost cried with relief. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where I used to do homework with Lily. Brianna said, "Therapy is hard." I said, "I know." She told me Dr. Chen made her list all the things I used to do for her. The list was 3 pages long. She said, "I didn't know." I said, "I know you didn't. That's why I left." We didn't hug, but we didn't fight. Wednesday morning was a family therapy session. Dr. Patel's office in Kettering, not Dr. Chen. Linda, Brianna, Tyler, and me. Gerald refused to come. He sent a text. "This is between you four." Tyler showed me the message and rolled his eyes. Dr. Patel was a small woman with sharp eyes. She said, "Jenna, why are you here?" I said, "To see if we can have a new relationship." Linda spoke next. She said, "I miss my daughter." Dr. Patel asked, "Which daughter? The person or the helper?" Linda went silent. That question landed like a stone in water. Linda started crying. Not performative crying, real, quiet tears. She said, "I don't know how to be a mother without needing her." Dr. Patel said, "Then let's learn." It was the first honest hour we'd ever had. Brianna admitted she was angry I left because it forced her to grow up. Tyler admitted he watched me drown and did nothing. I admitted I stayed for years because being needed felt like being loved. We all left with homework, not hugs. Thanksgiving Day was at Linda's house. I arrived at 2 p.m., not 8 a.m., to cook. Paula flew in from Pittsburgh to be my backup. Linda had hired a caterer from Dorothy Lane Market. No one expected me to cook. I brought a pie from the store. Brianna brought the kids. Lily ran to me and showed me her missing tooth. Mason told me about his soccer goal. We ate at 4 p.m. Linda said grace and actually thanked me for coming, not for helping. I felt my shoulders drop an inch. After dinner, Gerald cornered me by the sink. He said, "You really shook things up with that binder." I said, "I just told the truth." He said, "Tyler hasn't spoken to me in a year." I said, "That's between you and him." He walked away mad. That was new too. I didn't fix his feelings. I let him carry them. Paula winked at me from across the room. Friday morning, I met Linda for coffee at Ghostlight Coffee downtown. Just us two. No buffer, no kids. She brought the navy blue binder. She had kept it. She said, "I read one message every night before bed." I asked why. She said, "To remember what I missed." She opened to April 14th. My pot roast text. She said, "I wish I had answered." I said, "Me too." We didn't rehash the past. We just sat with it. She asked about my life in Bend. I told her about the Henderson project, about pottery, about Naomi. She listened. She didn't offer advice about moving back. She said, "You seem peaceful." I said, "I am." That was the whole conversation. Saturday, I took the kids to the Air Force Museum. Just me and them, no parents. Tyler and Brianna had a date day. Lily held my hand the whole time. Mason asked 100 questions about planes. Oliver fell asleep in the stroller. At lunch, Lily asked, "Are you moving back?" I said, "No, sweetie, but I'll visit Mom." She said, "Okay, can we visit Oregon again?" I said, "Anytime," and I meant it. Because this time the visit would be on my terms, not my duty. Saturday night was hard. Brianna and Tyler had a fight after their date. He called me at 10 p.m. from his car. He said, "She's doing the victim thing again." I said, "Tyler, I'm not your therapist. I'm your sister-in-law." He paused. Then he said, "You're right. Sorry." He hung up and called his sponsor instead. That was growth for both of us. Sunday morning, I packed my bag at the Marriott. Linda drove me to the airport. We listened to NPR, not a lecture. At departures, she said, "Thank you for coming home." I corrected gently, "Thank you for having me visit." She nodded. She understood the difference. She hugged me and didn't cling. I got on the plane feeling whole. Back in Bend, Milo greeted me like I'd been gone years. Naomi brought soup over. I told her everything. She said, "You went as a visitor, not as staff." I said, "Exactly." I slept 10 hours straight that night. December was calm. Linda texted me photos of her new therapy workbook. No request for me to explain it. Brianna sent a video of her doing Mason's science project alone. She captioned it, "I did it without you. It was messy." I replied, "Proud of you." She replied, "Thanks for letting me learn." That exchange healed something old. Christmas, I stayed in Bend. Paula came again. We did our own traditions: tree, lights, pot roast on Christmas Eve. Tyler sent videos from Ohio. The kids opened the gifts I mailed. Linda was in the background, smiling, not controlling. She texted me at 9 p.m. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart, I love you." I texted back, "Merry Christmas, Mom, I love you too." No guilt, no wish you were here, just love. It was small and real. I went to bed peaceful. January brought a surprise. Gerald had a heart scare. He went to Miami Valley Hospital for 2 days. Tyler called me, not to ask me to come, but just to tell me. I said, "Do you want me to fly out?" He said, "No, we're okay." Linda stepped up. She drove Gerald to follow-ups. She organized his pills. She didn't call me to do it. Brianna watched their kids so Tyler could help his dad. The family system worked without me in the center. It was clunky, but it worked. I sent Gerald a card. It said, "Thinking of you, Jenna." He texted back a photo of the card on his fridge. "Thanks, kiddo." That was the first kind text he'd sent in 5 years. I didn't read too much into it. I just accepted it. February, Helen offered me a director role. It meant more money, more travel, more stress. I thought about it for a week. I talked to Paula, Naomi, and my therapist. I realized I didn't want to be indispensable at work either. I turned it down. I told Helen I loved my current balance. She respected it. That was a new kind of power. Linda called when she heard. She said, "Are you sure?" I said yes. She said, "Okay, I trust you." That sentence was worth more than the promotion. March 5th came again. 3 years since I left Dayton. Linda called at 7 a.m. Oregon time. She remembered the time difference. She said, "3 years ago you drove west. I'm so glad you did." I cried in my kitchen. Milo licked my tears. She said, "You taught us how to be a family without using you." I said, "You all did the work." We both owned our parts. Brianna texted later that day. 3 years. Thank you for leaving so we could learn to stay. I screenshotted it. That spring, Tyler and Brianna started marriage counseling. Not because they were divorcing, but because they wanted to stay married. Tyler told me, "We're learning to fight fair." I told him I was proud. He said, "You modeled boundaries first." In April, Linda sold the big house in Dayton. She bought a condo near the bike path. She said it was too much house for one person. She did it all herself. Realtor, movers, paperwork. She sent me photos of her new small kitchen. I sent back a heart emoji. May, my 36th birthday. Linda, Brianna, Tyler, and the kids all FaceTime together from Ohio. They sang off-key. Linda held up a sign she made. It said, "Bend or Bust 2024. She was coming to visit me in July. She bought her own ticket. I laughed so hard I cried. Naomi was next to me on the couch. She whispered, "Look at your table getting fuller." After the call, I looked around my apartment. The wood table, the pottery bowls I made, the photo of Milo at the river. I thought about the navy blue binder sitting in Linda's condo. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was just history. I opened my journal and wrote, "Part 3 ends here." I went home, but I didn't stay. I visited and I left whole. That's the miracle. July came and Linda actually got on a plane to Oregon. She flew alone for the first time in 20 years. I picked her up at Redmond Airport with Milo in the backseat. She hugged me at baggage claim and didn't cry. She said, "Your mountains are bigger in person." I said, "Wait till you see the river." She stayed for 5 days in my guest room. We didn't do a packed itinerary. We drank coffee, walked Milo, and cooked together. On day 3, we made pot roast together in my kitchen. She taught me the pinch of time her mother used. I taught her how to use my instant pot. We ate at my wood table with Naomi. Linda said grace and thanked God for second chances. No one asked me to clear the plates alone. The night before she left, we sat on my balcony. She said, "I read message number 214 again on the plane. That was my last text before the binder. It said, 'I love you all. I'm just tired.'" She said, "I finally heard you." I reached over and held her hand. She flew home to Dayton on Sunday. She texted when she landed, "Home safe. Thank you for letting me visit your life." I replied, "Anytime, Mom." August was Brianna's turn. She came alone for a weekend, no kids. Tyler stayed with them in Ohio. It was her first solo trip ever. We hiked Smith Rock at sunrise. She was out of breath halfway up. She laughed and said, "I'm so out of shape." I said, "You're just out of practice living for you." That night, we stayed up late talking. She told me she was scared she'd become Linda. I told her she was already breaking the cycle by noticing. She cried and said, "I'm sorry I used you." I said, "I'm sorry I let you." We both apologized and meant it. September, Tyler brought the kids back for a full week. This time, Brianna stayed home to rest. The kids called it Camp Aunt Jenna. We didn't do anything fancy. We went to the library, made slime, and watched movies. Lily told me she wants to be an engineer. On their last night, Mason asked, "Will you ever move back to Ohio?" I said, "Ohio will always be where I'm from. Oregon is where I live." He nodded, like that was a good enough answer. Kids understand boundaries better than adults sometimes. October marked 4 years since I left Dayton. I didn't make a big post about it. I just took Milo to the river and sat. Paula called and said, "You did it, kid." I said, "We did it." Because healing was never just mine to do. Linda sent a photo that day. It was the navy blue binder on her bookshelf. She had put a label on the spine. It said, "The year we woke up." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Naomi asked what was funny. I said, "My mom just archived our trauma." November. Helen gave me my annual review. She said I was a leader who didn't burn out. I told her I learned the hard way. She asked if I wanted the director role again next year. I said I'd think about it. This time the choice felt free, not fearful. Thanksgiving, I hosted in Bend. Paula flew in, Naomi came, and my 2 pottery friends joined. 6 people again at my table. We FaceTimed Ohio at dessert. Linda, Brianna, Tyler, and the kids were all around Linda's condo table. 2 tables, 1 family. Linda raised her glass on the screen. She said, "To Jenna, who taught us love needs respect." Everyone clinked, even through the phone. December, I got a Christmas card from Gerald. Inside, he wrote, "Thank you for the mirror. I'm trying to be better." It was handwritten. I put it on my fridge next to Lily's drawing. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's deciding the story doesn't end there. On Christmas morning, I woke up in my own bed in Bend. Milo was snoring. The rain was soft on the windows. I made coffee for 1, then 2 when Naomi came over. My phone buzzed. A group text from Ohio. A photo of all of them in matching pajamas. The caption from Brianna said, "Missing our Oregon girl." I texted back a photo of me and Naomi in our sweaters. "Missing my Ohio people." No guilt in either message. Just truth. That night, I opened my journal for the last time this year. I wrote 1 page. I didn't write about what they did to me. I wrote about what I built after: a job I like, a home I love, a dog who trusts me, friends who say thank you. I wrote about a mother who learned to call without needing, a sister who learned to parent without outsourcing, a brother in law who learned to speak up. I wrote about 3 kids who know their aunt loves them but doesn't live for them. That's the healthiest love I can give. I closed the journal and looked out at the dark Oregon sky. 4 years ago, I drove west, asking if I existed outside of being useful. The answer is yes. I exist in quiet mornings. I exist in pot roast with friends. I exist in boundaries held kindly. I exist in a text that says, "I'm glad, sweetheart," and doesn't ask for more. I exist in a visit that ends with a healthy goodbye. The binder wasn't the end of my family. It was the beginning of our honesty. We didn't go back to how we were. We built something new, smaller, slower, and real. It doesn't work perfectly, but it works without breaking me. If you're reading this and you're the reliable one, hear me. You don't have to burn your family down to be free. Sometimes, you just have to stop answering for a while. Let them see the silence. Let them learn the sound of their own needs. Your value was never in the errands, the rides, the free babysitting, the swallowed feelings. Your value was always in you. I didn't lose my family when I left Dayton. I finally found myself in Bend. And because I found myself, they finally found me too. The last thing I do every night is put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Not because I don't love them, because I finally love me too. And that, after 36 years, is enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. I am Jenna Caldwell. I am 34 years old. I moved from Dayton for the first time in my life. If I disappeared, somebody would notice. That's my story. Are you the villa in your family? Or did this make you realize you've been overlooking yours? Comment below. I'd love to hear. New here? Subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, your silence doesn't mean you're okay. Sometimes it just means nobody asked. Thank you for listening.